What'd y'all think about Jalen Carter's pro day? Was it as bad as Twitter is telling me that it was? I wasn't there on the ground. I did watch it on the SEC network and saw the footage that Palmer sent in. But what did your eyes tell you?
It was tough to watch him for us because that's when the interviews really started kicking off. But I will say this: he was there. He was there for a good time, not a long time. And what I mean by that is, the conditioning played a role in it. I didn't really notice it at the time, but you kind of put two and two together. He didn't work out for a ton. He looked good. I thought he looked great. In the very short time that I watched him, he looked great going through bags. He's quick, man. He's twitchy. He's a good looking player. But for whatever reason, he came in not as great shape and is carrying some extra weight.
I mean, look at him huffing and puffing right there.
Yeah, he's struggling a little bit, and he's been, it's been a tumultuous couple weeks for him, and maybe his conditioning and his workouts and everything are not exactly where his focus is at this point. And I know that probably everything that's going on is taking a toll on him. One thing I do find interesting though, he comes in at 9 pounds heavier than he was at the combine. Darnell Washington came in 8 pounds heavier than he was at the combine. He said he weighed 272 today. He weighed 264 at the combine. So, and Darnell had a pretty good workout. I thought he had a little bit of a limp, especially when he was walking around. But I don't know, maybe a little scale issue, maybe a little bit of last minute weight cutting for the combine that they didn't do for this. Not entirely sure. But he didn't look like he was in shape. I'll say that. Otherwise, the drills he did, he looked good in. Where it is he cramped up. Jalen's it's just not helping himself a whole lot right now. And what's looking at Stetson Bennett there on the screen. Everybody was talking about what he did to his draft stock by getting a public intoxication thing. I mean, Jalen's heard his worse. With events before the combine and events since the combine at Pro Day. And I didn't think it was just this god-awful, he struggled, he looked terrible type thing, but he didn't get through as much as you would want a potential 3-down defensive tackle to get through.
Yeah, it was a context thing. It was not he bombed, he tanked, he had a terrible workout. It was he already has all this stuff coming in. He needed to at least just hold the line and show up, work out solid, and be strong. And what I heard anyway from one of those workouts, I don't know who the coaches were, who the scouts were, or whoever that was the ringleader on some of those things. But I heard one of them kind of yelling at him or Nolan Smith. I don't think it was Nolan Smith, not to half-ass anything.
And they were yelling at Jalen. Yeah, it was
that's not what you want when 32 NFL franchises are right there watching you, whether you're half-assing it or not. You don't want someone yelling that at you. So that kind of stuck out to me as like, ooh, probably not the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you guys. I didn't think it was noticeably like terrible, but it was probably not his best. And Jake, like you pointed out over on the board, and did so again tonight, he's got a lot of things going on other than football. He's dealing with that as best as he can. And maybe right now the football is secondary, and that's not what you want when you're going through this draft process, but he's already being handed a hand of cards that, he probably didn't want right now. And that's his own doing. I'm not trying to say that the world is against Jalen Carter. That is his own doing. But, I think that probably it's being blown a little bit out of proportion. What he did today, if he wasn't in the spotlight that he was, I don't know that people would have paid as much attention to his effort, his conditioning, whatever it may be today. If he hadn't put himself in the spotlight already, I don't know that he would be in it right now.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's a spotlight. I think it was a microscope. Everything he did, it was like a tennis match. You could watch all 32 heads turn if Jalen Carter walked by him, even when he wasn't working out, because they wanted to try and glean anything they could out of his workout today. He was being dissected every single move today, and that's that maybe that would have happened, if you're looking at a guy that is about to be the #1 overall draft pick in an alternate universe where he doesn't come in with all this off the field stuff. Maybe everyone is analyzing him that much because he didn't do anything physical at the combine, but it certainly doesn't help. And in the weight thing, when that hit this morning, I think it was Nagy that reported it first, that he came in 9 pounds heavier. I was like, oh boy, everything after that today is going to be about what Jalen Carter is not doing right. And it kind of turned into that at an otherwise pretty successful day for Georgia, from my vantage point, just watching on the TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're above 300 pounds, that weight thing. But again, it didn't kind of hit me till later because we were interviewing Darnell and he said, that he did come in when they measured Darnell, they got him at 6'7" today. And then he was, well, what did you weigh? And he said 272 pounds. And I was like, man, that's a Jake Rose style weight gain right there in 2 weeks. I putting on 8 pounds is a good deep breath for me. But yeah, I mean, and then then they say the same thing about Jalen Carter, which I didn't hear until later. I don't know that the weight gain doesn't bother me as much as him just not being able to finish. And I wonder, and this is no excuse, and it's definitely not an excuse when you consider it's his own doing, right? It's his own doing. He got a warning for driving fast. He continued to do it. He was involved in what went on. Not necessarily, he didn't cause it, but he was involved. If maybe he didn't work out at the combine to give himself a little extra time to make up for some of the stuff he didn't do while he was dealing with all this stuff mentally and emotionally, maybe he wasn't where he thought he was going to be. Ultimately, the way Kirby Smart spoke about him today was interesting to me because, he did talk about how, some of the stuff Jalen's had to go through. He did make the comment that, Jalen, he was glad Jalen was able to be back around the team yesterday for practice. Right. And I don't know, it sounded like he was describing a guy that's been going through it. And again, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, Jalen's justified in showing up and, looking out of shape at the NFL Combine. But at the same time, we're looking for causes, not excuses, and I think that's ultimately having played a huge role in this thing. At what point, I don't know. Was it the legal issues that got him upset? Was it the incident itself? It's tough to say. But the fact that he's kind of trying to press through this and get through this, I'm not so sure we're not dealing with a dude that's dealing with in some ways, some survivor's guilt type stuff, and in some ways, a kind of a broken heart, because a lot of guys are. And, I don't know. I don't even really want to know. I would just like to see him get in shape and do well for himself going forward.
I'm totally with you, Jake. I think it's easy to empathize with what he's going through from that standpoint of, we're not charged with the same thing or the same crimes, but just thinking about where he is and the situation he's landed himself in right now, to see a guy that is potentially carrying a lot of that burden, it's easy to understand the human emotion of that and how it could set him back. Now, the question is, how many opportunities does he have? This was the last big scale opportunity in front of everybody. He could have had the combine. He chose not to. Would have made sense if he wasn't in trouble to, just say, okay, he doesn't need to do that. He proved it as a player. But now you're almost in the situation where, okay, buddy, you got to show me something, because now I'm finding more and more reasons to not pick you up. So didn't do the combine. He had the workouts today. Maybe there's some workouts in between now and the draft, but what can he do physically to show everyone like, hey, I actually can get in better shape?
Yeah, I mean, there are workouts in between. There's the individual workouts with the teams. I mean, hell, Jalen Carter, if he said he's going to hold a private workout on his own, all these teams would show up. A, to talk to him about his situation, and B, to see to give him another chance. These teams are looking for a reason to draft a player this good. They're not looking for reasons to – they are looking for reasons not to draft guys, but when you've got a guy that's this talented, that's proven it, this much on the field, they would love a reason to be able to take him and justify their selection. That's 100%. The way I see it.
Yeah, there's a group of guys, and it's a much larger group than the other group. But there's a group of guys, like you said, Palmer, they're looking for reasons not to draft these guys. Then you got the Jalen Carters and of the world that kind of have some baggage, and you're trying to find everything. You're trying to find that modicum of hope, like, oh, you're talking to your D-line coach and you're saying, hey, do you think you can get through to him? Do you think you can do this? And I ultimately think when you look at Jalen Carter's situation, the racing thing is problematic because you don't know. I mean, listen, Henry Ruggs had what happened to him in Vegas, and you hear about these incidents. I mean, is the next time going to be the time that Jalen Carter gets seriously hurt or lose, or worse? I mean, is the next time he goes 85 and a 45? Is that what's going to happen? We don't know, and you hope that he's learned that lesson. So that's kind of a red flag. This is another red flag. But I tell you, I'm with you, Palmer, 100%. I really believe that there are NFL teams just kind of, all right, can you get him in? And I think, Wes, I'm not sure on NFL rules. You've covered more NFL ball than I have. Don't teams get a certain amount of private workouts that they can kind of bring in and put them through?
It's been a while since I've been around that scene, but I mean, they do have their allotment of, contact time they can spend with them. Things they can do, workouts. I mean, hell, Bill Belichick shows up to Athens and told David Andrews to work out for him in the parking lot, basically. I mean, it's just you do what you can, and you get in touch with them and see what you can do and how much you can learn one-on-one. And, yeah, I mean, with Carter, you got to think somebody is still seeing something in there. Maybe they're understanding, okay, we get one bad workout, and that's what we saw today. But I'm curious, I mean, how much do you think one pro day like this, with all the context around Jalen Carter right now, how much can it really hurt or help him? I just don't know that one day, even if it was bad, let's take the Twitter talk out of it, the actual reality of the situation. I don't know how much one day was going to impact him one way or another. And let's take a step back and think about the context there. For a talent of Jalen Carter's magnitude, I just don't know that it could.
No, I mean, Wes, you're right there, because when you're talking about players that are this talented, guys that could go number 1 overall in the draft, there's not a huge difference in terms of what they can do to go from 1 to 5, 1 to 7, 5 to 10, whatever, that small range. We're talking about it's money. It's a lot of money that's being, that's a matter of, those draft positions, but it's a small range. Today, days like today, the NFL Combine too, it's more for guys that are able to move rounds, that are back end of the draft guys that are able to impress a team. And instead of being a 7th round pick or an undrafted guy, they get a 4th round, 5th round grade. To me, that's what these days are more about than, hey, is this team going to take you at 1 or are you going to fall to 8?
Yeah, it's not. I will
say this:
Jalen's falling out of the first.
If I'm an NFL scout, and I would be surprised if this doesn't come up in at least one meeting, right? If I'm an NFL scout and I'm thinking, or a GM, I'm asking myself, all right, life is hard, okay? Life is just hard, and bad stuff's going to happen, and tough stuff's going to happen. I mean, you may not lose a teammate, be right there, be a part of it, all that stuff, but is this how he's going to react when stuff gets hard? Is he going to kind of go in the tank for a few weeks or a couple months and kind of lose himself and lose his body and lose his conditioning? I think you got to ask yourself that question. I think you got to ask yourself the question of is he going to be the kind of guy that's going to battle his weight his whole career? And it didn't seem to hurt Jordan Davis too much. And Jordan Davis, I mean, I don't think folks really understand how much that was a yearly deal of, hey, Jordan, you're too heavy, you're 370, you got to get down to 330. And then finally, I don't know if you guys noticed this, that last year, his whole career, it was 320. That last year, Kirby and company are like, yeah, we just give him 335, whatever. Jesus Christ. I mean, it was like, golly, let's just,
But Jake, if Jalen was battling weight his entire career, don't you think we would have heard about it the same way we heard about it with Jordan?
No, I agree with you there. But at this point, you've got that. We're talking about a seed of doubt here, and you got to gain some weight in a short period of time and gets out of shape. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that as they scrutinize him, I think some teams are gonna. I don't know. I don't think this. I know this. Some teams are going to put a little bit more into it than others. I know that through the years of being in press boxes and hitting up the guy with the Arizona Cardinals pullover on and talking to the guy with the Indianapolis Colts hat on. I've made some contacts and some guys that I've that I can text with.
Okay, Adam Schefter.
I saw. Oh no, I can't break any NFL news, but I can text them about things like.
Did you just give up your sources? Did you just tell us?
No. I did not use the teams of the teams that I talked to. No.
Jim Irsay is Jake Rose.
Yeah, I get a lot of stuff from Jim. We got the same. Never mind. I was about to make it. We got the same guy.
Got the same pharmacist.
See, street pharmacist. Yeah, we got the same street pharmacist. But no, we definitely don't. What he had in his system that night put me on my ass for months. But no, so I hit some guys up after I saw them there. I didn't get a chance to talk to them. We get close enough. They're we're peons and they're serfs. But I texted a few guys and everybody kind of had some version of we'll see how it goes. What do you think of Jalen Carter? All this stuff. But I will say the guy that I'm talking about, like the people are absolutely in love with, Nolan Smith. Everybody I talked to is like, man, that Nolan Smith kid is something else. I bet you loved covering that kid. And I was like, kind of. He started to sound like at some point he started to sound like a 59-year-old Baptist preacher. Very old soul that man is. But they love Nolan Smith and everybody's in wait and see mode on Jalen Carter. There's plenty of time between now and the NFL draft for those private workouts, for those interviews. And I tell you what, man, if I'm Jalen's agent, which I believe is Drew Rosenhaus, one of the best ones out there, also one of the most boisterous. If I'm his agent and his trainer, he's running at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he's running at 6 o'clock the next morning.
I'd almost ask Kirby Smart to get involved, and I don't even know if that's allowed, but I'd say, hey, coach, how'd you do it? What'd you do? And that's what is kind of speculated about right now is, these guys leave the meat grinder that is Georgia's program and just go crazy or not keep themselves as disciplined because Georgia's program is so stringent. And I say that tongue in cheek about getting Kirby Smart involved if you're Drew Rosenhaus, but I do wonder, the hardest thing to do a lot of times is to motivate yourself. And it might be hard when you're getting screamed at by Kirby Smart, but it's a lot harder a lot of times to motivate yourself to do anything.
Wes, you make a really good point, man. And I could not agree more with the idea that when you do run that meat grinder, a lot of guys are going to respond to it positively. They're going to just transition to the next level because they see the dollar signs and they see that earning potential. Alabama had their fair share. Eddie Lacy, body just let it roll. Eddie Lacy looked more like Jake Rowe than he did college Eddie Lacy, a few years into the league. Rolando McClain was a stud at Alabama, maybe the best college linebacker from a size and speed and freak show standpoint I've ever seen. Flamed out in the NFL. Henry Ruggs went, bat feces crazy when he got to.
Well, let me tell you one. Speaking of the NFL coverage in my distant rear view, this seems like a simple example that maybe turned into a bigger one. But Calvin Ridley shows up to rookie camp, and it is hot as hell outside, and he's wearing long sleeves. And everyone's asking him, I think D-Lab was probably the first one to ask him, why are you wearing long sleeves? And Calvin goes, well, Coach Saban wouldn't let us do it. And that was like a little glimpse into that. I finally have a little freedom. So what am I going to do? I'm going to wear long sleeves. And that, I'm not saying that's why he got in trouble with sports gambling.
You can't be responsible for that as a program. Like one of the things that killed Georgia fans under Mark Richt, that just drove them crazy, were And I don't count Geno Atkins in this because Geno Atkins was a stud in college, and he was just a better pro because I think better pro relative to his draft position because there was no Aaron Donald yet, and nobody wanted to draft 6'1.5" defensive tackles at the time. But you saw so many guys. Rashad Jones is an example. Several others who played for Rick, had good, decent Georgia careers, but man, the NFL got the best of them. It got the best version of those players.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen at Alabama. That doesn't happen. That's not going to happen at Georgia. That they're going to squeeze every ounce of potential that kid has at the age of 18, 19, 20, 22, 23 out of that kid. And, you can't be responsible for them not being able to take it. Like I said, most of those guys are going to go into the pro level and they're going to be, hey, listen, I practiced harder than this in college. And now I'm getting paid for it. So I'm good to go. But some of those guys are going to get a little bit of freedom. Maybe they had more structure at the college level because of the fact that they were a little bit more apt to step out. But you can't be responsible for it. You got to run your program the right way, the way that wins championships and the way that produces 5 first-round draft picks and 15 overall draft picks. And it sucks for Georgia fans. I hate it for all of you. Every single one of you that this offseason has been what it was. But I also wish you wouldn't have wasted last offseason bitching and moaning about Stetson Bennett. That I've said my piece.